Hey, everybody, I'm Erica Lukes, and this is Expanding Frontiers. I want to just give everybody a shout out who gets into chat. I can see all of you. It's good to see you, and I know more people will be coming in as the show progresses, but tonight is going to be a really important night. I have been talking a lot about disinformation campaigns, about misinformation, about people, vulnerable people falling into traps that are not only dangerous to their mental health, but also create a tone that really damages our country and world relations. It is far-reaching. And tonight, my guest is going to give you information and tools so you can spot this type of activity for your own sake, for the sake of what's going on in our world, our community, because it is having a detrimental effect. And not a lot of people really understand the way things roll out. So I'm really thrilled to have Vanessa Walilko here today. And I want to just read her bio for you because she is, to me, I met her. Vanessa, how long has it been? It's been 2 years?
2 years, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And the second I met you and talked to you, I was just like, okay, this person is somebody that needs to be at the top of my Rolodex. Not that it maybe even has those anymore, but
Or gets that reference.
well, that's true. Maybe the older crowd gets that reference, but
I do.
I just knew because we are kindred spirits in a lot of ways, and I'm so impressed by you as not only somebody who makes the most amazing costumes. It just you were stunning. You know so much. You got your bachelor's of science in sociology from DePaul University while contributing to an assessment of the Cook County Chicago domestic violence program. Vanessa's bio or thesis, Beyond Feminisms, Refocusing the Women's Movement Through the Lens of Liberation, was published by Emerald Group Publishing. Vanessa is a volunteer with Expanding Frontiers, and Vanessa has done shows. She did a great show about domestic violence with Jack Brewer. You can go to expandingfrontiersresearch.org to check that out. And she is also a multi-talented artist, having designed chainmail used in Broadway productions by a WWF star and a high-profile wrestler, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And she's also maintained a successful and entertaining personal pants podcast, as well as related online conferences that were popular and well received. And I also wanted to say she was just recently featured in a magazine, which we will talk about a little bit later tonight. But again, I'm so grateful, Vanessa, to know you, to have you in my life, and to have you contributing to what we do here and just making the world a better place, in my opinion. You're a goddess. You're a hero.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I know. It's true, though. I really mean that. And I wanted to say really quickly before we get into this incredible interview, I want to tell everybody to go to Expanding Frontiers Research, because we just recently published a blog, and this blog is concerning Jan Harzan and the predatory behavior. And we got the transcript. EFR got the transcript for his hearing, for his sentencing. And Jack recounts what we received in that information. And it is truly, truly startling to hear not only the level of depravity and the lengths that he went to manipulate this underage girl, 13 years old, who was a part of a sting, actually, so it wasn't really a person. Has this happened before? The judge certainly thought that there was a pattern of behavior, that a person of his age it was very questionable. And so I also want to just say really quickly before we really start talking, Vanessa, and we can talk about this a little bit too, but I wanted to say that it was amazing to see in the transcript to have Jack recount that there were people in the UFO community and in his church community that wrote letter after letter after letter talking about his exceptional character and the fact, oh, we never saw anything. Oh, we can't believe he would do this. And he was framed by people because he knew the truth about UFOs. And it is so embarrassing to me. It's embarrassing. It's alarming.
Yeah.
And this should be something that is shared far and wide, because this goes on far too often, where you have somebody who is using his political influence or using their influence in a church community or in a UFO group, probably more than one, and they get to manipulate people who are vulnerable. And it is really just, it is beyond disturbing. So please go to Expanding Frontiers Research and then make sure all of you are sharing that blog. And I also want to just say, click like, subscribe. I'm broadcasting here on my old YouTube channel tonight because I have a lot of people that have watched me there, and I want to make sure you go to the new place that we are really doing our show, which is it's the Expanding Frontiers Research YouTube page. So just go there again, click like, subscribe, and if you want, become a Patreon, because $15 a month helps us do our records requests and helps us give information to you, and also it helps to preserve an archive that I'm 10 feet away from, which is the most remarkable thing. That, I mean, it's just been a pleasure. So anyway, thank you so much for letting me go into that. But Vanessa, before we get into what we're really going to talk about tonight, give me your thoughts on, the Jan Harzan stuff.
Oh boy. So this is the problem that I have in general. And again, from my background in domestic violence research, where it's so much of these narratives, and more than just domestic violence, it ends up about protecting the abuser. And because again, people who are predators are really good at choosing victims and in presenting in a particular way to people that they either can't victimize or don't want to victimize because of some sort of other angle that they can work with these people, right? So if you, again, you have people who are abusive. This happens with serial killers, right? Oh, I never saw this coming. Oh, he was a great guy. Oh, maybe
Right.
he was a little weird, but I didn't think that he would, have bodies in the basement or anything like that. So I think there are actually multiple things at play. The first thing that came to mind as you're talking is that people really hate being wrong, and people really rarely deviate from their initial impressions of a person. So if the initial impression, the initial reaction, initial interaction is really good, that's just kind of in your brain. This is a good person. And so if you hear anything to the contrary, you're going to discount it. I mean, this happens with people in abusive relationships too, where it doesn't start with like cataclysmic violence. It's usually like name calling, some boundary pushing, and it's just like, because you have this memory, especially people who are abusive are really good at charming people. They're really good at presenting themselves in a particular way. So you have this initial impression, and of course, let's not even talking about love bombing, right? Oh, this is somebody who cares. This is somebody who loves me, who is giving me all these things. And then slowly they start taking that away. Slowly they start pushing with abuse. And you're left thinking, did I do something wrong? This person was so great. I can't believe this. And then it escalates, it escalates, it escalates, it escalates. Again, that's with people. Again, that's with people that they know they can target safely. I already just brought up serial killers. The reason so many of them kill sex workers is because who is the most marginalized in our
Right.
society? Yeah, her, whatever, human garbage, whatever term that they use for people who are also just trying to survive. So yeah, you can pull from a population that the crimes aren't going to get investigated, right? Or if you're
Right.
manipulating kids, or if you're manipulating people who see you as some sort of authority, or that could, again, talking about the UFO community, give you access to secret knowledge and other things, you might put up with a little more than you would otherwise. And again, it's constant boundary setting. One of my best friends is a therapist, and she uses this term that I love so much. And it's like the raptor fences, right? Like the raptors are testing the fence for
Right.
weaknesses. And when they find one, they're going to hit that. This is any predator, any predator. Where,
Right.
where are the weak spots? Okay, those are the people. Again, I'm really like off to the races here, but I also took a self-defense class in my early 20s, and they told us that the first thing they taught us is how to yell back off, because just a verbal
Right.
barrier is going to stop a huge percentage, a majority of attacks, because you've already identified yourself. You're not going to be an easy victim, and so they will move on to someone who will be. So once you get your voice, then they teach you how to fight, because some people will not stop with the words. Um, but yeah, it's and again, if you aren't the type of person to use and manipulate and just treat people as something that you can extract something from, you're not thinking this way, and you don't think other people think this way. So it takes a lot to kind of expand what you're thinking about, like how you conceive of certain individuals, right? Because if somebody's going to church or is a pillar of their community, you're not going to think that they're like trying to solicit teenagers in their free time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, absolutely, and that's, it is, I mean, it's, just, you're talking about this, and I think of Ted Bundy. He's such a prime example
Yes.
of somebody that people did not wanna believe. I mean, how many, I mean, he had people defending him on both sides of the aisle here, and it was just like, because he's so charming, he went to law school, and, oh, he's so handsome, and, all of these things, and it's like, meanwhile, he is a predator and a really horrific, uh, person that really didn't care at the end of the day and was still trying to manipulate people.
Yes.
And people like that are charming, and it was amazing to me to see, in my instance, to have that up close and personal experience where this person conned everybody in his path, including lawyers, including prosecutors, including, the National Guard, until, it finally was exposed to the point where people are like, "Oh, we just threatened to commit mass murder at the, National Guard headquarters. Maybe we better, rethink this strategy." But it is really, it is shocking to see the way people like that behave. And as you mentioned, we're not used to that, being good
Mhm.
people. We wanna give people the benefit of the doubt, and we don't expect people would behave like this. But I think with the case of Harzan, I am sure that there were enough signs there for people that were close to him that they should have understood that. And at the very least, I have to say, Kathleen Martin, who was involved in the abduction research for MUFON, the fact that she would, even after he was convicted, write this letter of support,
Right.
and it's really, it's shocking, and I think people need to get a clue. And actually, this goes back to what we're gonna talk about tonight, like reading the signs, looking at information, doing your homework, and never accepting things at face value.
Yes. And to your point, if something feels off, listen to your gut. You can verify that information, but listen to your gut. Again, part of the misinformation I'm going to talk about, anytime I see something that just doesn't feel right, that's when I start picking at it, right? If something like passes the first test, I'm like, okay, I'm probably not going to worry about it. But there will be some word, some phrase, something that just sets something off. I always talk about like a tuning fork, right? Like that's not on pitch. So let me take a look at this and see what is actually going on and following certain threads to see if I can figure that out.
And I think that's a really great, I mean, that's a tool that's something that we should teach young kids. I
Yes.
mean, that is something that we should be teaching. I mean, who needs education in this country? Whatever, we don't need it. Utah's ranked last in the country, by the way, because of our geniuses here. But, it's just had to throw that little jab in because it makes me feel better. But, it's like our children should be schooled in how to understand this type of predatory behavior, how to identify, as we were talking before the show started, how to look at different websites and identify, is this website, does this jive? What is this information that we're receiving? But of course, we have people in power here in the United States that don't want to do that because it benefits their pocketbooks.
Yes.
You
Look,
you can
people who are critically thinking about everything. It doesn't just stop, right? Because it's a
Right.
continual process, because that it is a way to engage the world. It doesn't just stop with websites. Suddenly you're thinking like, why do I have to work 40, 50, 60 hours a week at a job that I hate just to kind of scrape by and pay rent to someone else who owns a building and I don't own anything? And why does any of this make any kind of sense? God forbid you start questioning deep stuff, right? So they don't want, if you don't question the top stuff, then you'll never get here. And so just, oh, just accept it. Just, I mean, talking about young people, I feel like a lot of younger people actually have more of a critical eye towards media because they weren't raised on legacy media, which you
Right.
could actually trust. You could trust what journalists were telling you, reporters were telling you on television, in newspapers. You actually had journalists who were doing investigative journalism and then breaking stories that were taking down presidents. And now they wait, they find out about this corruption, but they save it for the book. They don't expose it. They write a book about it later so they can make money off of it.
Who are you talking about? Bob Woodward? Yeah, I gotta just say that was like,
Yeah.
really, seriously? Okay, that might
Yes.
have been good information for the public to know, just whatever, but
Right.
I guess he'll sell lots of copies of his book, and at least we have the information. So, but I
Sure.
think that is really true, legacy media. I mean, there were standards
Yeah.
back in those days.
There
And
was
now, I
yeah.
look at the media, especially, I'm here in Utah because that's what I get to look at. But just to see, like, we had our governor here is a walking catastrophe. He was at Arlington National Cemetery with Trump,
Okay.
for the infamous photo shoot.
Yeah.
And, he is all about, promoting conspiracy theories. And while he makes money hand over fist selling alfalfa to China. Um, Whatever. You could go down that rabbit hole, and I do in my free time because that's the way I roll. But, I mean, it's like you look at people. There was a story. So 26 Republican governors are trying to get information and press the DOJ to release and be transparent about Haitian migrants. So it's this talking point, and it's
Yeah.
like, it's just so, and the media here, like, totally, "Oh, this is so great," or they're, "Hey, nuclear power is coming back to Utah. Oh, that's just so great. We need this clean energy." And nobody fact checks or nobody offers a counter argument to this. "Oh, hey, this is great. Everybody, nuclear reactors coming down your block next week. Let's just, it's freaking mind-blowing to me." And then you look at the disinformation and misinformation with the hurricanes and the
Yes.
way that community members or people in these ravaged areas were victimized and gullible enough to not check sources and to believe that if FEMA came to help, they were going to confiscate the land that they were living on.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like we have to do better than this.
Right. Right. Well, and this too, so oh God, there are multiple things that I want to say. So this idea of um, wanting to do better, wanting to check sources, there's no consensus reality anymore, at least in terms of the media, right? And so I currently work in public relations, and my boss used to be a news journalist, and she has watched journalism shift over the past few decades because reporters used to have a beat, and that's what they covered. And now, because wages for reporters are, and most of them are freelancing, right?
Mhm.
Okay. let me try to figure out how to say this that isn't just like a rant and me screaming. So you have lots of local journalism that has been gutted, right? First of all. So first they fire the copy editors, which is why you see so many typos on websites these days. And then they also fire fact checkers. A lot of the again, a lot of local journalism outlets have folded completely. The ones
Mhm.
who've survived have moved from having full-time staff to freelancers. And I bring up the freelancer issue because, so again, we have clients, we pitch press releases, we just pitch them to the media for any stories that we think are relevant. And the report, and because of that, I have several Substacks that I subscribe to for journalists. They will post updates on things that they have written in the past week, and sometimes it's 20 articles or more. They have to crank out the pieces because the per piece rate is nothing. and they want to be able to live and do this for a living. So they have to just crank things out, crank things out, crank things out. Now, because of that, they don't have the time to fact check. They don't have the time to find sources. They don't have the time to make sure the sources that they have are reputable, aside from just like scanning a website and making sure that the person who says, hey, I'm CEO of this organization, they can check, okay, this is the CEO of this organization. They just do not have time. And so, again, now to be on this side of it, I was always critical of media, and now I'm on this side, and I have zero faith in any media outlet. Like I said, we pitch stories, and if the reporter likes it, he'll pick it up or she'll pick it up. And then if it gets traction, that will then get syndicated, because again, a lot of these local outlets, they don't have the staff. They have a bare bones staff. So they're going to pick something up from a different outlet and they're just going to reprint it, sometimes exactly as they reprint it.
Right.
And things immediately get syndicated on like Yahoo or MSN or AOL. It just suddenly the news is everywhere, right? You pitch one outlet, suddenly it's in 20, or if the AP picks up a story, suddenly it's in 600 outlets. So that to watch how news moves, and then again to also realize that, again, when I watch, which is rare, but if I watch the news, most of the time, if I'm looking at the stories, I'm thinking, oh, what was the PR firm and what was their angle and who was the client that they were trying to get a placement for? Because that is a chillingly large percentage of stories that you were going to see on the news. That's
Great.
because I got clients on the news, so I I know.
I mean, and it's so true. I mean, it is interesting the way we've gone to freelancers for a lot of these, things. And I mean, they're making, $400 a story, if even that.
If that, yeah.
And it's just, it really, the quality. And do you even need to be a journalist these days? Do you even need to have any credentials?
Well,
Or, we've seen this, with what's got, I think it's good and really bad in most of these ways, to not have people that are credentialed in what they're doing.
yes. Well, and also, even if they're credentialed, if they're overworked and they just need to get the stories in on time so they can pay their rent, like you're not going to be doing your best work because you're just operating from a place of survival. And so, because like I said, that, and I didn't kind of follow through with, most reporters used to have a beat. So if you had a political writer, they were only writing about politics. Again, some of these people, they, like I said, I get these newsletters and it's 20 different stories about 20 sometimes different subjects. You can't be an expert in 20. I mean,
Right.
if you have ADHD, you probably
Right.
can, but
Take us for example.
I mean,
Yes.
come on.
Expert. Yes, right.
Right. But it's also whiplash. It's so, I mean, I get that, because again, my ADHD, I'm doing public relations, I'm making chainmail, I've got like a wood carving, and I just have to look around me. It's like, oh, there's my sewing project, there's the crochet, that kind of, oh, the stuff I plan on selling on eBay. Like, it's just a lot of plates in the air. But it's, you can't be an expert in all these subjects. You can't be on top of all these subjects.
Right.
If you're having to write about 5, 10, 20 different things. There was just a query for one of our clients, and it was about looking for information about spas. And I saw the journalist's name. I was like, why is his name familiar? And I looked it up. It's because it was it was for a food thing, like for a much different client a couple of years prior. It was the same journalist. I'm like, what? You shouldn't be talking to chefs and spa directors. Like, but that's just how it is right now. And I don't think people realize like the shifting landscape, and because of freelancers, and because it's hard to find a full-time job, and because journalism is precarious. There have been so many layoffs in recent memory. You might have somebody who is working, like I said, a political beat. 6 months later, they're working for an arts magazine because that's the job they could find. So there's also no sense of digging into a subject, again, because local journalism is being gutted, that being in a community, caring about that community, giving news to that community.
Right.
Like I said, you're just pulling the syndicated stories that you're seeing on the wire. That's not typically relevant for a lot of local people. And sometimes, which I don't want to spoil anything we're going to talk about, but it's politically motivated and will have a political agenda because that's where they're getting the funding from,
Right.
or that's who the parent company is, and they're trying to get certain stories out into the media.
You nailed it. Absolutely. And I will just say, there are, I've got friends that are journalists, and also the person that did my 4-part story on the domestic abuse
Yes.
situation in the National Guard and things. I mean, that Fox 13 they've got 2 investigative journalists
Good.
who freaking rock.
Yeah.
But they have their specific beat. I mean, they have months to dig into a story,
Right.
to do the records request, and they have that leeway, which is something, again, you just don't really you see because everything's so quick. You don't have news outlets that are really allowing people to dig in to stories. And if you do, like we've got a paper here, the Salt Lake Tribune, and
Mhm.
they've done some wonderful work over the years, really doing the deep dive investigative journalists things and exposing things, but now they've been kind of gutted and they're struggling a lot. And like you say, all of these really great sources for our communities are disappearing, and that's really it's sad. And then you also have, and I want to just address this quickly because I watch YouTube a lot. But I've got I got a lot of free time. I'm just kidding. But because I just might never mind. Anyway, so I there are some channels on YouTube that I've been watching and that I really like. And there are also some channels like we were talking about again before the show that have kind of come out of nowhere. And they will post a lot of, we're experts in this, and there's one website or one media outlet, quote unquote, on YouTube called the Young Turks, and they like to fancy themselves as progressives. That's what they're using. And then when you dig into what they're saying day after day after day, and then you finally get it, it's like, whoa, these guys are just claiming that to hook a bunch of people and then brainwash them into believing their, ideology. And so it is interesting again, and that's the same thing as we see with like legacy media or, but it's we just have to be so careful that just because we like an idea that we're hearing from somebody, that there is that ulterior motive to the content they're creating.
Especially in, like you said, this rapid profit-driven media economy, right? Again, good investigative journalism takes time, takes digging, takes research. If an outlet doesn't have the budget for that, guess what? They're not doing those stories. It doesn't mean those stories aren't there. They're just not happening there because people don't have the resources for that. And again, especially when with YouTube, anything online, and you have an algorithm driven internet and an algorithm driven news cycle, which again, clickbait and rage bait, because the more clicks you get, the more ad revenue you get, and the
Mhm.
more you get pushed in the algorithm. Again, because again, ADHD, right? Before I was doing PR, before I was doing any of this research, I was doing search engine optimization. My aunt started a business doing this, oh God, like 20 years ago at this point, and I
Mhm.
worked for her. And so in the early days of like people trying to crack Google algorithms to figure out how to get their websites to the top of search results, because as most people know, if you're not on the front page of Google, you will not get found because very few people click through to the second page, the third page. Again, ADHD, I will go to 10, 20, however far I need to go, but that is rare. That's just how people
Right.
work, because again, that instant gratification, like, again, I love the internet in so many ways, but it's really wired us in a way to like seek information. If we don't get it immediately, we kind of abandon the process or just settle for what we've kind of found initially. And again, a lot of that information could just be bad. It can just be bad.
Right. And so, yeah, I mean, this is such an important conversation. I have to say, especially right now, I mean, right, this is a critical conversation, and
Yeah,
I'm really looking forward to hearing your examples, for you to show us and educate us on some of the things that you've uncovered.
it's my favorite. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Good. Well, you just tell me where you want to go because I think I know how to share a slide.
Oh, good. All right.
I
If you want to
know.
get some slides, we can get into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, cool.
Hopefully. Okay.
Just so people know, I have 3 case studies. 2 I had done about 5 years ago, just because these are things that I like to do. The middle one, if you follow me on Twitter, you may have seen this. I did add some extra screenshots because I had started taking this down certain threads. So the context for this, a friend of mine was harassed by this Chicago comedian, and a bunch of people came forward with harassment allegations. He got driven out of the city. But entitled white men, rich white men, really hate consequences. So about a year later, he tried to get back into the community, get back into the public space. And so there was this article about him that came out because this friend of mine had Google alerts for this guy. So it was just like, all right, as soon as anything comes up, right, they wanted to know. And so there was an article that came up and very quickly got taken down. And then I think it was like a couple months later, it came up again on this website called Thrive Global. His name is blacked out. Again, Erica has had enough heat from enough people. I'm not trying to bring any more upon her head. But this is a screenshot that I took at the time. This article was up for only a couple hours. And then as soon as it got exposed, it was all over Twitter, at least in that Chicago comedy community. It got taken down a couple hours later. But I had a screenshot of it up. In this, it was a fluff piece, right? It was a fluff interview piece with this guy. And it was and so of course I'm like, okay, who wrote this, right? So the first page we have here is the author page on Thrive Global, and it's Gail Green. And Gail Green, author of An Insider's Guide to Interior Design for Small Spaces. So I'm like, well, this already doesn't match up. So I have to do some research about this, right? Next slide. So first I look up Gail Green, and who is an actual person, right? This is from Amazon. I just took this today. This is her book, right? She's an actual author. She's an actual person. So I'm like, okay, so I know this is a person, but let me find out more about Gail Green. So you can go to the next slide. So this is Gail Green, and this is from her business website. Now, this is clearly not the author photo that was on Thrive Global, but this is her. Her name and her credentials are being used on a different website. So of course, me being me, go to the next slide. We have this author photo. I want to know who this guy is. So my general first step is I grab the image, I put it in Google reverse image search, which was way more robust back in 2019 when I did this than it is now because, well, ranting about Gen AI, maybe for later, maybe a different episode, but it's pretty much ruined Google search results.
Wow.
Anyway, so I put this in Google AI, or using Google reverse image search, and then I found him. You can see that on the next slide. So his name is Andreas Buergi, and he's an executive coach. He is not writing articles for Thrive Global. And so again, it's like I said, I already knew going into this that something was not right. So I was going to follow absolutely everything to figure out what was going on. And I was going to compile it all neatly together because I wanted people to know that my friend was going to that my friend's harasser was trying to go back into society. Now, like I said, I work in PR now. So I know how kind of the ethical way, I guess, of manipulating media.
Well, good.
It's like you're helping your client.
The standards.
Right, exactly. Thank you, exactly. But again, PR, public relations, media relations, you have a client, they do work that you believe in, and you want to get them out into the public, right? I like the clients that I have now. Like I feel enthusiastic about them. But then you have things like this, which are clearly meant to bury negative search results.
Mhm.
And so then you can go to the next slide. And so I'm like, okay, well, how do you become a Thrive Global contributor? And so I see this sign up form and I filled it out. And then you can go to the next slide.
Oh.
It's just a WordPress interface. So anybody with any credentials, any name, anything could have written an article. Again, this was 5 years ago. They have cleaned up the website since then. And that's actually, I'm trying to decide, do I go on that tangent now or wait a little bit? I think I'll wait until the end. But anybody could write anything on here. And again, like, again, what I found really funny, it's small up there, but you can see like rejected. It says like 8,400 articles rejected out of the published like 86,000, right? So then I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to start looking at some of Gail Green's other articles. So you can go to the next slide. So and this
Oh. Hey.
I'm
Well,
just
I
gonna
mean,
read I'm just gonna read my favorite sentence in this, which is, there will never be been better time during the festive season to watch ESPN in the tub with a glass of wine. So
oh god.
this got right, like
Okay, I'm seeing so many things in my mind I do not need to see.
I
Okay.
so this is the stuff that's getting published, right? Like what's getting rejected if this is getting published? And so I have a couple more of
Okay.
Gail's articles. Another one, I just friggin' love this. T-shirt in small doses. The vest is one of those very risky pieces. Use cotton only to go to the beach, and you will be sure not to make slips. Even more dangerous is the white cotton undershirt. Too often it seems that we have forgotten to wear something on. The less chic part of the vest, the bra is with visible shoulder straps and lace on display, is a real horror to be avoided at all costs. And then there's one more. And this one isn't as funny as the last two, but I personally love it to pieces because it's and you can go to the next slide. It is
Oh,
a
hang on, I've gotta recover from this
oh,
slide
oh
and the
yeah.
last slide. Hang
And
on, I'm
Erica,
having
you
a
might not
mental
recover from this presentation.
meditation moment. I know, it's gonna be a crapshoot from here on out.
Totally fine. So this one, again, I
Oh
just personally love it because
gosh.
it's an article about soy wax eco candles, but the URL is for how to, like, don't forget to decorate a floor with a rug. So I don't know if it was like a PR client that just didn't pay their bills and they decided to replace the article with something else. But again, this is the quality control on this website. And I guess this is where I will go on my rant about Thrive Global. So you have a couple different cons going, right? So on the one hand, you have this Gail Green. And so in most of Gail's articles on this website, there was a link to a business. So again, you're seeding these fake stories for a client to get them up in search rankings,
Okay.
right? The more they're cited, the more they're referenced, this idea of authority. A lot of
Mhm,
people aren't clicking on all the websites, right? But if there's a volume of websites, it lends
mhm.
a certain sense of credibility. Thrive Global also was letting anybody I think this is allegedly, I think that they were letting anybody publish anything so that they could show like, hey, look, we've published 80,000 articles about
Right.
wellness and taking care of yourself. We are such a great hub for this information.
Mhm.
Give us investor money. And again, these are the types of articles that were being published and are still there because I had links to the old site. These are new screenshots. These the ones with like the band at the top. Those are all new screenshots. So it's the community section now, and it isn't the main part of the website, but it's still
Okay.
on the website. And again, because it's been around for a while, the way domain authority works, usually it's like the longer you've been around, the more things that link to you, that gives you domain authority. So then you
Mhm.
can kind of leverage your your pretend authority with, like I said, investors. So there's a next slide. So this
Oh,
one,
boy.
I know. So it's redacted for a reason. This was one. So again, Gail Green at the time. Gail Green now has something like 20, maybe more articles on Thrive Global. This one, um, at the time, there were only maybe 6. And this was one that didn't have any links anywhere. Now, again, as somebody who works in PR, I knew this beforehand as a business owner, but I know this now, especially with PR. Your goal is to get, if you want an article printed, you want your experts cited, you want a link back to their website, because typically you are trying to drive traffic to them so that they get more money, they get more donations, whatever type of client you have. But you're building up their expertise, right? Their credibility. So you also need that back channel, because you're trying to get them money, right? That's your whole job.
Right.
Add value. So this one was weird. And so this person was cited as a fitness expert, right?
Mhm.
The whole article is about fitness expert. And again, the my initial searches were based on 2019 algorithms, but I put this person's name into Google, and again, the first, I want to say 2, maybe 3 pages were basically this, just a version of this article, or a different iterations of this article that linked nowhere. If you search this person's name in terms of fitness, there were 0 Instagram accounts, 0 YouTube channels, 0 interviews, that aside from like this type of fluff piece.
Wow.
Got to, like I said, either page 3 or 4. You can go to the next slide. And this is where I found the racketeering case that this person was trying to bury, that they were named in. So again, you have this entire website ecosystem that is built towards reputation management. And
Yes,
it's
yes, 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 yes.
done by creating all these fake news websites, which are, again, you mentioned the article that I was quoted in. I feel very strongly about, like, this is an existential threat. And I don't think I'm overstating it, because you have all this, it's just fake. It's fake nonsense on the internet that doesn't mean anything, that doesn't do anything, that doesn't inform anything, that just kind of vaguely serves the interests at a time for certain people. So yeah, again, now, like I said, that was 2019, where it was buried, buried, buried. Again, a lot of those websites are gone because they're fly by night operations that just kind of like work for a time, and then you don't
Right.
need them anymore, and they're gone. So I think
Dang.
that's, yeah. That
And you
was the
know,
one
I
that
mean, and
blew
I
my
will
mind.
definitely say that, people that are, that I think that there's somebody in Utah that is very proficient at doing this to, manage his
Yeah.
reputation.
Again,
And I'm sure all of you who follow my show can figure out who I'm talking about, you know?
I again, there are multiple ways to game the system in terms of search engine optimization, in terms of manipulate, again, because most people are looking online for things. And this is why, I guess I'll just mention this now, maybe I'll keep mentioning it. Like, so much of this I still had access to because I had it somewhere documented and I had kept the screenshots. If I just had links to all these things, a lot of them would have been broken. I
Right.
wouldn't still have them, right? Because again, if you go to Thrive Global now, Gail Green doesn't have a profile photo. So somebody must have tipped them off like, hey, don't use my image and cite me as a different person. But again, that takes a certain amount of vigilance. This is totally random. I don't have screenshots for this, but um, there's a lot of spam accounts on Instagram, and somebody, they didn't even leave a comment for me, but they left a comment on some page I was following, and they were offering, it's like, "Oh, I'm this old lady and I want to give away my money. So reach out to me. Like you seem to have like a nice personality. I'd like to write." And again, that like mental tuning fork, I was like, "Oh, the pitch is off." So I check that person's profile and I see the name that they're using for who they are. And I'm scrolling and I'm scrolling and I'm scrolling and I'm seeing all these photos of the same woman, but I can't even remember now if it was like a tattoo or if it was something in the background. Oh, actually, I think I actually remembered it. It was an image frame that had like a Facebook thing or something like that, or even an Instagram thing that had the person's actual name on it. And it was not that username. So because I saw that name, I actually Google like I Google searched that name. I found her on Instagram and I said, "Hey, somebody is impersonating you. I can't take this profile down. I can't report them because it's not me, but you can." Because what this person had done is they had scraped this woman's profile of all of her images and reposted it on theirs with a different name. And so again, if you're not tapped into a tarot reading community, the like medium community, there was this whole tarot reading scam. I think it was 2 years ago at this point, where basically the same thing was happening to tarot readers, where they were getting their entire profiles scraped, reposted with a username that either had like a, an extra letter or an extra underscore or something like that, and claiming to be the original person, and then following all the people who followed the original account. And then most people don't think about it. They're like, "Oh, cool! This occult writer I like followed me. Let me follow them back." And as soon
Uh,
as you did that, or maybe it's the alternate profile because a lot of people keep like private profiles. Followed them back. As soon as they followed them back, they got a DM that said, "I got a message that I'm supposed to give you a tarot reading." And then these people would pay them money for the tarot reading and then get ghosted. So it was a scam. It was a scam that was ruining the reputations of actual legitimate tarot readers and mediums. And it was awful. Like it was awful. And Instagram did nothing. They did absolutely nothing about it.
wow. Of
Yeah.
course not.
Why would they help people,
And they're
please?
better than X, whatever we call it today.
Yeah, I know. It's Twitter to me. I'm
Yeah, it'll
golden.
always
It's the
be
Sears
Twitter.
Tower and it's Twitter.
Yeah. No, that I mean, it and it's like, it is so amazing, like, even, I mean, I look at people, like, in my parents' age group, and they're, the internet, all these things are just thrust on them, and I mean, they have no clue what they're doing. I mean,
No.
I think some of us don't have a clue about a lot of this, and that's why, again, I'll just state that, your show, or having you on the show tonight to give this information is really critical. And again, why isn't this information being put out by people, that by government officials, by our educators?
Authorities should be empowering people to
Right.
figure out if what they're reading is real or not. Because again, it is an existential threat. I can get into the social like implications, but just an individual level, because these scams. Again, how many times have you heard about elderly people getting scammed of all their money
Right.
because somebody claimed to be an insurance adjuster or whatever, and got like an elderly couple to like sign away their money, their property, whatever. So you have to be vigilant, and you have to be vigilant at every age. You also have to be on top of all this. I know it's exhausting, because it is exhausting, because there are so many scams and there are so many different ways that people try to like penetrate, right?
Right.
Again, even at work. So just recently this happened where I got an email, and it was a request it was a proposal to work together, right? I'm like, I've never heard of this person. Thankfully, I've never heard of this person. I don't know who she is, so I know this is fake already, right? And it was sent through DocuSign. So the initial email, this was interesting. So I always like take the original URLs and I drop them into like a URL checker to see, oh, is this going to send me to a phishing website or not? And the initial URL didn't. It actually sent you to a document. But if you clicked the document, That was the phishing, that was the malware link, right?
Okay.
So again, there was this layer. Now, what was wild is it was an entirely spoofed email. So it was it was a legitimate woman with a cosmetics business, and it looked again, if you checked like the headers, that you could probably figure out it was fake. But like at first blush, to people who don't know where to look for real information to figure out like who has sent you this email, it looks fine. And what they bank on too is that they bank on that you are working for an office where you have too much going on, and the organization is too big, and you don't know who's doing what with whatever clients, so you're just going to click on it. I used
Mhm.
to get so many when I was doing accounting for my boss before I moved into like proper PR. I would get so many fake invoices
Mhm.
because they thought that we were big enough that we would just pay it.
Right.
I'm like, "No, it's 5 of us. I know every dollar that's coming in and every dollar that's going out." And
Right,
I
and I think, you know, I
yeah,
just have to say that, and sorry to interrupt you, but I just have to say that that's what happened with the MGM grant, with the hacking that
oh,
went on at the MGM
oh
grant.
my god,
It was
right.
just an employee that clicked on something, and then that was the door, the gateway that just, that
Yeah.
was pretty significant, hack in that regard,
That
so
and that's it. Again, everybody needs to be vigilant. You have to have a workplace culture. You need to have just like, personal OPSEC to know like what are you clicking on? What is coming in? If you're not sure, if one cell in your body is not sure, find a link checker online. Check every single link before you click on it. There are free websites where you can click links and they will tell you if it is real or if it's fraudulent and it's sending you to a phishing scam.
right, and
So,
and I've
yeah,
got to just I'm just gonna go off the path a
yeah,
little bit, and then we'll get right back on it, but
sure.
there is a person, or whatever this thing is, in the UFO community who remains anonymous to this day, and has mined a lot of information and puts things out so they can this can hit,
Uh-huh.
kind of hitch people. But it's like, how many? God, we've got all this great vast archive. This is so easy. This is so wonderful. Click this link from this anonymous source. And I look at that and I just think, I mean, first of all, like, what freaking planet are you on
Yeah.
that you would ever do that? I mean, and I know that, you get these rewards, and this is so great, but, like, seriously? You're gonna be dumb enough to have an anonymous source that refuses to be forthright about their identity,
Yeah.
with this great cover story that's actually not, but, it's like, at what point are people that stupid? Well, clearly they are, 'cause,
Well,
but
and I will just counter that. I don't think it's a matter of stupidity, right? Or
okay, well,
intelligence or
then
whatever. I really think it is a desperate need to belong. Because this is the same with cults, right? I have been obsessed with cults since I was a teenager. What possesses somebody to join a cult? And people want to belong, people want to feel like they're a part of something, people want to feel like they're building something, people want to feel in on the secret. Oh, we know a thing that other people don't know. Like, and again, this is also a thing that predators do when they are grooming people, and they're like, let me share something with you. Don't tell anybody else about this. But you're special. I want you
right.
to know this. Like, so again, it's predators, manipulation tactics, and it's the same. Again, the fact that there is so much that I picked up studying domestic violence that is parallel to stuff in the paranormal community, to stuff that's going on in the UFO community, that
Right.
again, that it's like so many walking red flags.
Yeah, that's exactly true, and thank you for letting me just kind of go off on that. I was talking to Jack
Yeah.
earlier today, about this and how people are, just, they do wanna belong to a community. I mean, obviously, we all have our thing, and then you get into the conspiracy culture or the paranormal culture, some of these things, and you typically, because it's such an oddity, like, you are more, I think, susceptible to wanting
Yeah.
to believe and go down those rabbit holes. And again, I think it's just really important you bring up good points. There are ways to check, the URLs, to check information, but I think the biggest thing too to stress is, if somebody is anonymous, you don't, why give that person the time of
And
day? when they're not
anything.
forthright with their identity.
Why give them
You know, I mean, that's
anything?
just one of the many things that you're talking about
It,
tonight that is really critical to keep us safe in our current, state.
it's wild to me, this inversion where somehow somebody's anonymity gives them more credibility. That makes no sense. That makes no sense. Again, every time something doesn't seem right, I pull apart the threads and you're like, oh, this isn't real. This isn't real. This isn't real. This isn't real. Anybody can say anything online. Anybody can say anything online. It doesn't mean anything.
Right, and 2, I think another thing that, you were kind of mentioning that need to belong in a community, and you saw this with, Lou Elizondo and that group of people in the UFO community that came out of nowhere, but then they kind of targeted military veterans, people, that were, that they found out vulnerabilities, and then they preyed upon them, and then they groomed these people and turned them into their henchmen to do the dirty work that they really wanted to do, but they wanted to remain, you know,
Right.
above it all. I don't engage in this behavior. And so it
I
really is, there's so many layers to this.
Yeah, and again, I think about this a lot in terms of trauma, that people who have experienced trauma will not will not pay attention to certain red flags or not identify certain red flags as red flags because of whatever trauma they've experienced in their childhood, in their early life, that made them again think like, oh, well, my parents did this, or my teachers did this, or my whomever did this. So even though this doesn't necessarily feel right, or again, maybe something feels kind of off, I can't listen to that voice because again, these other people who at least purported to love me, care about me, want to support me, did these things. And then you can draw those parallels that way too. Again, if you like can't trust authority for a particular reason, but then somebody else swoops in, right? And kind of like taps into those things. I don't know. It's like it's a lot of dark stuff that gets manipulated and a lot of, like you said, vulnerable people who get taken advantage of. And then, of course, they have all this shame that they were taken advantage of again, and they might not talk about it. They might just leave the community rather than
Right,
expose things because they don't want to feel the shame that they missed out. And it's like, no, you were taken advantage of by a predator. They know what they're doing.
right.
Like exposing this prevents other people from falling down that
And
path.
and it's not easy. I mean, I
No.
wish, I mean, my life would have been a hell of a lot easier had I not chosen the path that I chose, and I just
Yeah.
walked away and didn't want to expose the National Guard, expose the Salt Lake City Police Department, to try to do this after I begged them for help because something was
Yeah.
really is seriously wrong, and there will be consequences to people
Yes.
not taking action. That
Yes.
is I've done that for me personally because I know there's a danger
Yes.
to a lot of
Yes.
people, and, it
Yes.
sucks. It really sucks to have to go out there, and sometimes you are so traumatized that
Yeah.
your only defense mechanism is to retreat and heal, and there's nothing wrong with that. We each have our own ways after being victimized that we heal. For me, part of
Yes.
my healing process was to go out and kind of, to expose that and work through things. But
Yes.
your point is, like, so important, like, how do we know about these things if these things aren't talked about?
Right.
And I know in the UFO community, because people are in the conspiracy, paranormal, in some of these communities, people do feel so ashamed, and they are so scared, and they are being
Yes.
threatened and
Yes.
intimidated, and
Yeah.
they look, and see that this is, like, commonplace in these communities,
Yes. It
and
is.
nobody's doing anything.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why I love having you on the show. I love seeing the people that I have in chat tonight and knowing that each one of us is doing our part to make sure that we're creating a safe space and a safe network where we're sharing information and we're getting this information out to the public so other people do not get victimized by this, and showing examples how
Yes.
to be safe when you're going to websites, how to understand
Yes.
what it's like to be indoctrinated into a cult, You know,
Yes.
there are definitely, these are things that we should just know, and this is what we're trying to do, you know, and so I
Yes.
really appreciate that, Vanessa.
Oh, of course, of course. Well, again, this dovetails because again, my ADHD interest, you give me a puzzle, I will figure out this puzzle. And so very similarly, if something doesn't seem right, I'm going to pick it apart until I figure out what it is. And I love sharing this information with people because again, it's not like I'm doing some kind of magic here. It's just a way of thinking, a way of picking things apart, and a way of analyzing, stepping back, really, really scrutinizing a thing. Anybody can do this. This is why I'm showing all the talking about all the steps that I go through to find this, because I don't want it to be like secret arcane knowledge. I want everybody to know so
Right.
they can protect themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah. So if you're ready, I think we can
I'm
go to
ready, honey. Sorry that we went off
next
on that
page.
little.
I mean, I loved it. So this was one, I did a Twitter thread about this. This was back in April, um, when bird flu concerns were really starting to mount. And frankly, they should still be mounting because I think we're at like 85 herds that have been infected with bird flu. That's a whole other episode, whole other episode. But so there was this Twitter account called Outbreak Updates that posted something on, and this was not an April Fool's joke, although initially I thought it was, posted on April 1st. 2 people have been diagnosed with bird flu in England. Now, I personally hadn't heard anything about it from, again, legitimate media sources about people, about human beings getting infected with bird flu in England. But a lot of people I knew were sharing this, like, "Oh my God, I can't believe it! I can't believe it!" I'm like, I don't. This doesn't quite seem right. So you can go to the next slide.
Okay.
So the first thing that again tipped me off about it was that all that account did was share a screenshot. They didn't share a link to anything. So I searched the name Camellia Kirk because I mean, again, it's unique enough. If this person is an actual journalist, I will be able to find their work, right? Well, the only thing that came up was this website called Media Run Search. And it was talking about the 2 people have been diagnosed with bird flu in England. I was like, okay, Media Run Search. That doesn't exactly sound like a real website, but sure. So next slide. So I scroll down and there's a quote that's talking about, bird flu. And then of course there's this just like random prepositional phrase that is a link out. So I click the link. You can go to the next slide. And the link is to a press release from 2023, not 2024. Now, what's the purpose of something like this, right? Again, you have a Twitter account that is clearly engagement farming, that is clearly like fear farming, because people who are COVID cautious are typically on top of knowing what is going on with bird flu, right? So if you
Right.
have an account that is talking about new variants of COVID and suddenly they're talking about bird flu, everybody's like, oh my God, well, they botched one pandemic response. They're going to botch this one. And we're seeing it happen in slow motion. So of course they're sharing it all over the place. But again, this is why, so again, there's different layers of misinformation because there can be just you're sharing information that is false, but then you can also like falsely share correct information for a particular agenda to foment like fears or to discredit people who are talking about bird flu because it's like, look, they got hysterical about a random article that isn't even real on a fake
Right.
website, right? So then, me being me, I'm like, all right, well, I know this is fake. Let's see what else is fake. So you can go to the next slide. So, of course, I start with the author.
Oh
And,
yeah.
and I do what I usually do. And I did a reverse image search on her profile photo. So you can go to the next slide. And Dear Camellia Clerk is actually Michelle Schulp, who is a web developer. You can see other photos of her. Again, Google image search lately has limited people searches and their faces, which on the
Wow.
one hand, I get because of privacy. On the other
Right.
hand, I hate it because it's harder to identify fake stuff, right?
Since when do they care about privacy? I mean,
Well, they care about
seriously?
us having access, they can have all the information they
Right.
want about us. They can data mine all of it, but God forbid we have access to the information to protect ourselves.
Right.
Again, that's a rant for, well, today clearly, but for every day. So, but because again, this is clearly a picture that she used on her website or on this interview at some point, it was already online. So I found some more. You go to the next slide. Um, so at Megan Link, somebody claiming to be Megan Link was using her image as a profile photo on Twitter. You can go to the next slide. And then I found her again on Quora as Haley Ethel, where she's like trying to pitch Samsung phones to people, right? And then this is where I realized, and I started getting really sad about this, although I'm not a Quora person, I'm more of a Reddit person if I want people answers. That bots and that, like, again, people who work for companies, people who work for whatever are seeding a lot of these websites with fake profiles so that they can promote products, but they're pretending to be real people.
Right.
So it like lends a certain legitimacy to them. So next slide. So then again, I know who Camellia actually is, but the bio was so specific that I'm like, okay, well, I know she's fake, but where is this coming from, right? So I just
Mhm.
did a quick web search for the full it was Friendly Zombie Guru. That was the thing that got me. I was like, is even that? What is
Yeah,
that?
it's catchy. Oh, you
I
know.
mean, I caught my eye, clearly led me down a rabbit hole. So I did a web search and for the whole thing, and it came back with a reply or one on the next slide, one result for a Vincent Frankie on a
Okay.
developer website. Again, free resources for improving your typing skills. Again, like websites that are at least purporting to be real people to try to get some legitimacy. But ultimately, if you're clicking on any of these links, it's promoting some kind of software or something like that. So again, didn't get a ton of
Sorry.
results. No, you're fine. We're fine here. Oh, I didn't get a ton of results for the full bio. So I just Friendly Zombie Guru. I was like, who else? Who else is a friendly zombie guru? Oh, this David S. Smith just on Twitter, right? Just
Oh,
randomly there.
looks
Um,
genuine.
oh, right, exactly. Also, side note, again, when you're arguing with trolls on Twitter, remember this is what is on Twitter. If you don't know it's a person, don't engage. Don't engage. That's just my little PSA for people. Anyway.
I love arguing with bots, you know. I mean, I love arguing with fake
I mean,
it's so much fun.
who doesn't want to pour their precious life and time into
Right.
arguing with fake profiles?
Right.
Anyway,
Yep.
next slide. So again, we found this Yvonne Kilgore, who is also a friendly zombie guru, a passionate bacon maven,
Huh.
a friendly pop culture geek, and then et cetera, et cetera. And so this is, Artistic Oasis. I mean, go to the next slide. So this one was interesting. Yeah, and we got another one. So just a rando on Instagram, but hipster friendly zombie guru. And this is where I realized, like, oh, there is some weird, like, iterative bio generation that whoever is like doing these fake profiles is using, so they don't have to think up bios on their own. They're just like, it's
Okay.
probably some program that's spitting out these fake bios, right? But there's a certain cadence to people who are actually writing real bios, right? That is just like writer, thinker, hipster friendly zombie guru. So they found some sort of pattern in how like real people write bios and created this kind of fake iterative stuff. So the next slide. Um, so this Michelle Smith, um, again, we've got the hipster friendly bacon advocate, right? So that's where it's like Mad Libs with with certain words, and they're just kind of throwing them together. But what was funny about this one is if you go to the next slide, they just tweeted out like the bio. I guess they ran out of content.
Oh, good night.
And this
Lord
is where
help.
I
Well,
was like, I have stumbled onto something people are not supposed to know. like I'm not a huge fan of Lovecraft or anything, but I do love the idea that there are certain things that people are not supposed to know or it breaks their brains, right? Like they just cannot fathom what they're seeing. And I was like, oh, I have found a part of the internet that is not supposed to be exposed. Like this, I don't like this one bit.
right. Right.
but I can't stop myself. So next slide.
We are kindred spirits, my friend.
Ah, I know. So since we were doing this tonight, I was like, hey, you know what? Let's go back. Let's go back to the beginning. Let me pull some more screenshots. So I went back to that original Media Run search website. And I'm like, okay, I want to see how many other articles that Miss Camelia Kirk has written. So you can go to the next slide. And 616 pages. There were like maybe 7 or 10 articles on each page. Pages. That's how many pages of articles this fake person has written on this one fake website. That this is the magnitude that we're dealing with in terms of fake news, seeded news, bot news, fake PR news, whatever. Like this
Right.
is what we have to sort through.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just want to address really quickly, JC in chat's just saying, I must be missing something here. I thought we all knew this has been going on for years. Well, no, we don't. A lot of people don't.
Yeah.
That's why we're doing this show to educate people. And if and I wish that a lot of people knew that this was going on, but unfortunately that's not the case. So, and if
Right.
JC, if you have anything that you want to add to give information to people that are listening to the show that would help us, inform us and educate people, that is great. I would love your comments about that. It's important that we get as much feedback to educate people who don't know.
That's it. A lot of people have no idea. I mean, I get there's this
Right.
idea of like the haunted internet, right? The ghost internet, like it's not real people anymore. But when you, again, when you grew up in a time where there were actual real people on the internet and you're seeing
Right.
this now, it's the magnitude of it. Like to me, that's terrifying. And I think a lot of people just have again, the scope. They don't understand the scope of this.
Right.
So
And
then,
and honestly, like it is, we look at people. I saw this really great interview with a fellow that was, helping people in with the hurricane relief. And, he's like, of course, this is our federal government's job. I'm a member of a community. And it's our responsibility as a community, as people that care about other human beings to do our due diligence to get information out or to help people in the situation of with the hurricane relief. So yeah, I mean, great. I think it's important. So
yeah,
bring
take
on your
care of each
comments,
other.
JC, and educate us because I clearly, some of these things I didn't know.
Right. So again, I kept digging. So this time I just went to the about page because I'm like, who is even putting this together or who is pretending? Like, what are they pretending? So you can go to the next slide. So feel again, just like site information, but at the very bottom, feel free to contact at powerhayden58@gmail.com. So,
Nope.
right?
And
Right.
not so much.
So I'm like, well, of course I got to Google search this email address.
Oh, good. You are
Uh, I
good.
was on it today. I was like, all right, I because again, it's curious. This is the funniest thing. So I Google searched his email address, and somebody on Reddit 3 years ago also stumbled upon fake news sites that were put together by the same person, like the same email address, and did an entire thread about entire post about like we have to be more careful about what we are sharing as news. It is in the World of Tank subreddit. I loved it so much. You can check out the next slide too, because clearly, when you start digging into this, you just kind of end up feeling like a conspiracy theorist because you're like, look at all these different connections, right?
Right.
So again, next slide. And a lot of people were like, well, like, what do we care? But again, he discovered like this person on Reddit discovered that there was a massive network of fake news websites. So again, it's not just one. It's so many. Like I said, Thrive Global, when I was searching, I ended up searching that article for the Rico case or searching that person. There are still fake news, other websites that are talking about this person as a professional trainer, again, wellness websites.
Right.
It's fake. It's all just fake. So next slide. So this is the third case, actually. this was, again, a friend of mine, that family members were sharing news from this website. And again, Internet Archive is down right now. I would have pulled a screenshot from 2019, but this is a screenshot of an article that they just posted the other day to give you an indication of the political slant and the agenda of the people who run this website. So
Did Marjorie Taylor Greene write that?
it's
That's
possible.
too intelligent for.
Maybe she had a ghostwriter. I don't know.
Right.
But
Clearly.
but so a friend of mine sent me this and was kind of really upset because family members were posting just I can't, again, a lot of rage bait articles like, I can't believe this is real. Like, do you know what the government's doing? Do you know, again, Democrats are dangerous, or whatever you want to say, whatever the agenda is at the time, because that always is kind of fluid. And so like posting uncritically this website. And so they asked me to take a look, and so I did. So you can go to the next slide. Unfortunately, because this was back in 2019, I didn't have a ton
Jeez.
of information. I know. Again, the archivist in me knows better. You take screenshots of everything, but this was
Yep.
just a one-off I did for my friend. I didn't think this would be, again, this wasn't a thing I thought would be public. So I don't have a ton of information, but what I did is I started snooping on lifesitenews.com. And so again, one of the things that I love to do, like I said, I love doing Google image reverse searches. Again, any kind of Google search for any text or any emails that seem very specific. But I also like going to website registrars to see who is running the website for a thing. So the website, lifesitenews.com, is for a business that is registered in Virginia. Now, the registrar, though, was based out of Wyoming. So you can go to the next slide. So I just searched, again, if you want information on an LLC, typically, if you know what state it's in, you can do an LLC search on the Secretary of State website for that particular state, and you can find out, is it a real business? Are they still in business? Are they in good standing? Have they've been paying their taxes? Like, that's all public information, so you can just find it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was curious, I wanted to know what this business was. And again, I'm not saying it because, again, you got enough heat. But but I
What
looked
are you
at this business.
saying? Am I gonna have to like be, looking
I think
with
you'll
my
be fine.
binoculars through the door even more?
I think you'll be fine. I think it's
Okay.
vague enough, but it leads to something that I actually
Right.
found really fascinating. So again, Wyoming Secretary of State. I looked for the LLC, and then I grabbed the mailing address for that particular LLC that owned the domain. When I put that into Google, the exact address didn't come up. But if you go to the next slide, um, there was a Reuters article, and this is how I learned that Wyoming is basically the Cayman Islands of the US.
Hmm.
So, yeah, for shell companies, because so like and it says later in the article that like Wyoming kind of tightened their laws when they realized that most of the businesses were their principal addresses were PO boxes and not a physical address. But still, there are certain things that are happening there. This is also where I learned. So I already knew about shell corporations or shell companies, but if you go to the next slide, they are doing something there called shelf companies, where basically a business gets registered and then it's kept on the shelf. But because it is a business that has been in long standing, right? Because typically, I mean, as you know, having a nonprofit, you need to have a corporation for a certain amount of time, or you need to have a nonprofit for a certain amount of time before you apply for government grants or before you do government bids or any of those
Mm-hmm.
things. So if somebody has an idea and they want to do something, but they haven't had a business for 1, 2, 3, 5, however many years, they can't do it. Oh, but if there's a shelf company, they just pull off the shelf and then they can
Wow.
put in a bid for whatever they want to do. Right. And again, credit histories, tax returns, they have the history, they got the paperwork, right?
Right, right, right.
So then there's this other component of it, and you can go to the next slide, which is the foreign connection. So
Dun,
there
dun,
were,
dun.
I know, I know. And really, I won't bury the lead here. So it's the last paragraph, right? Also linked to this particular address is the former Ukrainian Prime Minister Pavlov Lazarenko, who was once ranked as the eighth most corrupt official in the world by watchdog group Transparency International. So again, you have foreign interests, you have potential shady dealings, all this stuff happening in Wyoming. Oh, interesting, interesting. So so then I'm like, okay, well, what's going on with LifeSite News now? So you can go to the next slide. The current domain registrar is Epic LLC, which I hadn't heard of before. I hadn't heard of it all. So of course I'm like, well, who are they? You go to the next slide. And there's a Wired article about how it's the far right's favorite web host and how they got a new owner this year. Right.
Color me surprised.
Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? And
Yeah,
then
it really is, isn't it?
yeah, and not that Wikipedia is the best source all the time, but you can go to the next slide, and it just shows that Wikipedia for Epic, and again, providing services to alt tech websites that host far right, neo-Nazi, and other extremist materials.
Oh, good.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it
Yeah,
it it really I mean, it's shocking the first few times that you go down these rabbit holes and see, what's
yes,
taking place, but then it all becomes it's like, "Okay, well, yeah, this makes sense." You it
yeah,
it it makes sense. I mean, I've as, people know that have followed me, there are specific people that I've done this with or organizations or, now in the UFO world, you've got people that have got these new businesses or nonprofits that have popped up and, "Hey, give me your data. Hey, make sure you're calling a senator. Make sure, you're doing A, B, C, and D." And it's just like and then you start to look into that person's background or the company or the nonprofit, and yeah, there it really
right.
opens your eyes to things, and it's not hard to do. Like,
It,
it takes a really, I mean, you are on fire, and you do your digging, and you know how to do it. And other people should take the time to do that as well.
well, and to know, because again, part of why I wanted to share the screenshot is because their headquarters is listed in Sheridan, Wyoming.
Epic
Yeah.
shizzle.
So again, Wyoming, right? So it's and again, I had no idea about Wyoming until that was this incredibly stunning thing for me to learn. Like, oh, it's really easy to start an LLC there, and it's also really easy to hide money in whatever your business dealings are there. So of course you're going to have, like I said, nefarious actors, foreign actors, people with agendas who want to hide what
Mhm.
they're doing, and they're just gonna so
Absolutely.
they where to go. And again, it's right there. It's right there. Yeah.
Yeah, it is kind of like, hearing the news and then seeing some things that are taking place, like with Telegram. Obviously that
Oh
was
yeah.
all over, with the arrest of the head of Telegram, and then his, I'm a free speech advocate for years and years, and I'm not giving up, certain information. Meanwhile, there are terrorist cells
Yeah.
openly operating and exchanging information on how to carry out some pretty horrific things. And it's just like, so you look at these things, "Oh, I trust Telegram. Everybody's on Telegram. Let's get on Telegram," and different,
Yeah.
places that you go, and it's just like, "Freaking, are you kidding?" Like, look at who the people are that are involved, or are they, clearly hiding who they are? And
Right.
you it's just yeah, it's common sense.
Well, and again, it's so hard because again, most people are overworked. They don't have the time to do this
Right.
research, right? And this isn't like a special interest of theirs, so they're not going to go down these rabbit holes. I frankly, I get it. But also, again, I'm just like a paranoid Polish girl. Like you who are you? Why should I trust you? Like,
Right, that's
ultimate.
safe. I mean,
Yeah.
and I wanna just say, because somebody, Arlene, asked, what is Telegram? And thanks for asking that, because I should clarify that. So Telegram is like a messaging app,
Yeah.
and you can get on there and connect with different groups of people and then share what's supposedly encrypted, chats, but most people don't understand how to do that. And so a lot of criminal networks have flourished online, and that's been their go-to means to communicate with each other, and because the person that was head of Telegram was claiming free speech and all of this stuff and not wanting to disclose things, which we hear from, little Tesla boy and things. I mean, a lot of bad things take place in those dark recesses.
Yeah. That's it.
So yeah, thanks for letting me just clarify that.
Well, and also, again, paranoid family too, because my mother always taught me, like, don't put anything in writing that you don't want anybody else to see. Right. And I'm definitely lax with that. But that's the reality. Like, don't assume something is encrypted. Don't assume something is safe. Like, you really have no idea. You have no idea who's going to see it, who it's going to be shared with. Because again, governments might ask for certain things. But what
Right.
about corporations? I mean, we keep finding out about all of these data leaks, all of our data being sold to various
Right.
corporate entities so that they
Right.
can market to us better. So, yeah.
I mean, and that really is, that I always talk about on my show a book that I read, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. And that is such a
Oh, I did
great,
that.
great book. I recommend people get that, because it talks about, these different, Facebook and Cambridge
Mm,
Analytica and different, your Nest thermostat. And now we've got, your refrigerator, all these
right,
things are hooked up to, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. And, you go in there and you're glazed past all the things that you check off by saying, I agree to
yeah,
this, and you don't realize that your information is being shared with 300, I mean, all these different developers and people who you don't really understand, like, what is their motivation. And so we
right.
do have that. We do need to be on
Yeah,
top of that. So that's
and
really great.
yeah, I think that was my last slide for this, but,
Okay. Great
yeah.
slides.
Oh,
Jeez.
thank you. Lots of screenshots.
No, I love
Um,
it though. People love visuals, and I'm glad that worked, but because it is important, and it does make you wanna may I know what I'm doing tonight.
I mean, that's it. Again, I love doing this. I don't expect everybody else to love doing this, because I know my brain is wired a certain way. But just again, being able to clue in and to say like, hey, this doesn't seem right. Again, if you again, people can say anything online. They can, and people can do anything with that data online. They will, especially when you are dealing with corporate interests who really only care about the bottom line. They don't care about your privacy. If your privacy gets in the way of their bottom line or their profit margin or their stock prices, they, they're going to care about you.
Right.
I had to put out. Yes, Amy.
God, Amy, love you.
Mm. And it's hard because, like, again, I am generally a proponent of free speech, but who's deciding what is free speech and what is not, and what
Well,
is being protected and what isn't, right? Because that
right.
also has a very specific political agenda. Eh,
Exactly.
So again, again, just be careful where you tread. Be careful what you share. Again, I got to get better about this too, but like develop some good OPSEC, like figure out like what your paper trail is or what your digital trail is. And because again, it's the number of, again, in recent memory of hospitals sending me letters about data breaches and telling me, oh, well, just Gracie. um, like telling me about these data breaches. Oh, we'll give you a free year, not free for the rest of my life, but a free year of like, credit check, whatever those services
Mhm.
are. Uh, you know, Again, it's like stealing from my house and then offering, like, for your store, and then offering me a
Right.
coupon to the store. Like,
Right.
what
I
are
mean,
you doing?
and so what would you like, what would you do, if you know that you've got a big digital footprint? Like, what would you advise somebody to do? Because as you mentioned, there are all sorts of companies that have popped up, and it's like, hey, we can scrub the internet of all of A, B, C, and D, and da 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 da. And I mean, are those is that are some of them legit? Are some of them,
Some of
obviously
them
we should be
are.
dubious of, we should be aware of some of these things.
Right. I it's hard because there are some legit ones. Again, I I can pull I don't have, like, it off the top of my head, but I have some sources that I actually trust that have put out guides for that, that I'm sure I have bookmarked somewhere, but again, ADHD, it'll take me some time to find it. But basically, it's erasing your digital footprint, because it is terrifying, the amount of personal information. If you have not done a Google search for yourself recently,
Oh yeah,
right, the amount of personal
it's
information that is out there.
it's
Um, and because
special.
it's a lot, there are a lot of websites that pull, again, unfortunately, it is publicly available information, or that they are able to find, and then they just post it online. And it's not a doxing thing, it's like a people finding kind of thing. And a
Right.
lot of
Oh,
these,
yes.
right?
Yes, yes,
And a
yes.
lot of these people will also put all that information behind a paywall. So then they're also making money off of people who are trying to find you. It's or even just verify you are who you say you are.
Right.
It's but yeah, no, it's terrifying. It's but there are steps you can take, and some you can do yourself. I unfortunately am very much like a do it yourself kind of person, just because then I know what I'm doing. A lot of these websites that will have opt out um, policies, but those are also kind of infuriating, because you have to, like, email again, what I hate is that a lot of them have opt-out policies where you have to prove you are who you say you are, so you
Oh
have to
gosh,
give
okay.
them more information
Right,
about who
right,
you
right.
are. Like, again, there should be laws in place that it's just like an easy opt-out for all of these things, just for protection, just
You
for
should.
security.
You would
Yeah.
think, but, if, Elon Musk is in charge of things, then we're hosed,
I
because there'll be absolutely, or, I mean, there will be no regulations for anything, whatever,
Right,
but we're not
right.
gonna let that happen. Um, but he can take us, no, never mind. I could say something that I said to you before the show started, but I
That's
won't, because
taken.
I'm on my best behavior right
Keep
now.
that off the air.
Speaking of not putting information out that you don't want out there,
Yeah,
with
on
Erica
a
Luke. Thank
video.
you. And I better just say JC just, said this is his advice, which is, making sure that you sign up with credit bureaus and monitor,
Yeah,
your credit. It's shocking. People don't ensure that they have antivirus software and a VPN and everything else on your cell phone and all. And then there was another comment that somebody thinks that credit bureaus are not, that are questionable too. It's just it's truly the Wild West, but I think, yeah, VPN, absolutely, and I mean, you do have to monitor your
yes,
credit.
yes, because my God, well, thankfully, this didn't show up on my credit report or anything, but my business credit card, this was years ago, my business credit card account got compromised. And it was the wildest thing, because, and thankfully, the delivery company called me. It was the yeah, the delivery company called me and were like, "Hey, we've got like $200 dollars worth of pool equipment." And I was like, "Yeah, I live in an apartment building, so that's not for me."
Oh,
It was
wow.
hundreds of dollars of fraudulent charges. The weirdest thing is that somebody used my credit card and it was trying to ship stuff to me. I don't know how they were going to pick it up. And in any case, so that card, I got on the phone with my provider. They closed that card out. They sent me a new card with a totally different number that was compromised within a month. And I was like, cool, I'm closing this account.
Dang.
Yeah, I'm closing this account because this is not safe. I have not used
Right.
this, and now somebody else is using it. So, so yeah.
Well, and I just have to say too, I know I do from my recollection, I think that Equifax was involved in a big scandal
I think they were.
a
Yes.
few years back, and so I need to look into that again, but so it does, I mean, does raise a lot of questions, but just being mindful of your information. I'm always, it's always interesting to go to like People Finder, like you're mentioning, some of these sites and tell us and things, and it's just like,
Mhm.
all right, that's great. I mean, it really
Yeah.
is something else. And
Yeah.
so how, I mean, I just think it's important to learn how to protect yourself. And also I wanted to get into the aspects of foreign influence campaigns
Right.
because you alluded to, when I mean, you didn't allude to, you showed a clear connection to
Yeah.
a foreign actor, and we see that a lot, in politics, different, which shouldn't be the case, but we've
Yeah.
seen that in Utah where people from outside the country are influencing or, putting money into certain super PACs and different things. And so,
Yeah.
and with the Russian propaganda stuff or the Chinese or Iranian, I mean, there's so many different
Whatever.
things
Yeah.
going on in this climate, especially right now as we lead up to the election and then the certification of the election. I mean, there are going to be all sorts of games afoot. But the DOJ did I guess it's been about a month ago,
Oh, I think so at this
that
point. Yeah.
they exposed tenant media, and they exposed specific people that were and still are, much to my dismay, out there. They have huge YouTube followings, huge
Yep.
social media followings, and they're, promoting Russian propaganda
Yeah.
to create fear, to undermine our country and our
Yes.
democracy. And so, what do we look for? And you can go to the DOJ website and just look at that. It was Benny
Mhm.
Poole or Benny, oh my gosh, Tim Poole,
Yeah, temporal.
Benny. I try to block his name from my mind, you know, Benny. But I mean, it's like, these guys didn't even freaking miss a beat.
I- so this is the thing that I wanted to say first, because we've talked about this before. Like, so again, and this is why that Ukraine connection slide, I added that like right before we went on, because again, that article was out in 2011. Okay. That's when that article came out.
Gosh,
So the when something gets exposed, it doesn't mean that's the only one. It means that's the one that they have enough evidence that they can come forward and say, hey, we see foreign influence here. There are many other creators flying under the radar
right,
who are doing the same thing, who are paid by the same or different, again, and like foreign actors. But so I always highly recommend the work of Sarah Kendzior. um, she wrote Hiding in Plain Sight and They Knew and The View from Flyover Country, basically talking. I spent like what, like 1,000 pages. um, uh,
thanks, Jason, for that nice comment.
yeah, Jason, writing about like transnational crime syndicates and about government corruption and in both parties, and complicity in both parties, and connections to these crime syndicates in both parties.
Right,
So again, when something comes forward, it's because they can talk about it, because they have enough evidence. Again, this Ukraine connection for this Wyoming Reuters article, that it, again, 2011, right? That was a long time ago. Um, so we have to be aware of, it's not just like bots and PR firms and again, like individual weird individuals with agendas. There are also like political agendas
yes,
at stake. And like Sarah Kendzior also writes about like disaster capitalism, right? And people who see life as just something to extract resources out of, and countries as just something to extract resources out of, dismantling federal infrastructure,
hmm,
dismantling safety mechanisms, because you can make more money when things are falling apart.
right.
And so again, they have a vested interest in and profit from disaster. So
Absolutely.
so again, it's like, and this is like a little more than media literacy, but when you see particular people, particular actors, like trying to advocate for certain things, like we've talked about that like privately about like accelerationism and things like that. It's like, who does
Hmm.
that benefit? Ultimately, who does that benefit? And this is really my litmus test for anything. Does it benefit the most marginalized people, the people
Right.
who are in the hardest situation, or not?
Right.
Because if it's only protecting the interests of the people at the very top, and I'm talking about people you don't know the names of, right? Like, unless you see their names on a building that their family funded, right?
Right.
Like these are people, like, again, vested certain like people with people, corporations, whatever you want to say, with a lot of money riding on certain outcomes and
Right.
are trying to make certain outcomes happen.
Right.
So are you going to go
People
out?
in, I mean, yeah, right. I mean, people that, like with Russia or foreign adversaries, it's to destabilize our democracy, to
Yeah.
create chaos in the middle of horrific events where people are dying, and to put out. And
Yes.
it was interesting with the hurricane to see how the social media was flooded with different reports of people being trapped here and there, and then that would divert rescue efforts to that location to try to check on somebody and take away from the people that are really in need in a coordinated effort.
Mhm.
And so it's like it's just insane to see some of these things that are happening and are happening to marginalized, a lot of people that really need help, and it's infuriating to
Yeah.
me.
It well, yes, it is, because again, it's 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 manipulating people, it's preying on their fears, it's preying on, and I mean legitimate fears, right? Climate change is real. We have seen so many
Right. Yeah,
catastrophic,
and seriously, if you don't think it is, then frickin' step off to another show. Go watch Little Tim Pool or whatever. Little Benny. Go
like,
watch Benny.
I mean, again, I have seen it in my lifetime, right? This
Right.
isn't something that like again, to watch autumn shorten, to see like weird like seasonal progression where again it was almost 80 degrees today in Chicago.
Right.
And again, that like that kind of randomly would happen here or there, but it's been consistently getting hotter. And again, we can see us like a 10,000-year storm, a 500-year storm are now turning into twice a year storms, season like twice a season storms. So and again, when you have, and also when you combine that with crumbling infrastructure,
Right.
because the government isn't putting resources into modernizing things, where's that money
Well, when you've
going?
got people that are in places of power that are trying to dismantle the FEMA
Yes.
and the
I
National Weather Service, I mean, it's like, are you freaking seriously kidding me right now?
We're knocking
Really?
the teeth out of the USDA and the FDA.
Right.
There have been 2 major listeria recalls this week. They were voluntary recalls. No, again, this isn't the boar's head thing where multiple people died and multiple people were hospitalized, right? Which is its own thing. But there were 2 literally in the past week. Kroger, and I think it's Bruce Pack was the other one. Millions, I'm talking millions of pounds of deli meats that had to be recalled because of potential listeria contamination. Now, most people don't die from listeria poisoning, they don't develop listeriosis, but if you're immune compromised, if you're pregnant, if you're elderly, you can die from it, right? So it's a
Right.
serious thing. But also, again, so there weren't regulations to make sure that the product didn't get tainted. And so then think of the waste, probably 15 million pounds of deli meat just going in the trash. Just like think of all the animals that died
Right.
for to
Oh,
end up in
yeah.
trash. Like, so again, when you're thinking about disaster capitalism, it's also like the production of waste, right? There's so much waste. If you just had proper regulations in the first place, you wouldn't have waste. But
Right.
if you don't care if it gets wasted, because you kind of don't care where things are going anyway, because you just want profit, profit, profit. And you think that there's like this initial investment of like having, or like regulations are bad, you know? It's like we've had all these regulations to clean water, to make sure food isn't
Right, and it
contaminated.
still isn't clean, we got a little ways to go there, people, but
Oh boy, I know. That's the thing. And so it's a weird kind of thing because it's like I on the one hand I understand people who are like, "Oh, I want small government." Like I actually do. But when it's in this when this is how it comes out, like people die. Again, I all I could think about like how many cows were murdered for food that then just went in the trash. Like, so it's
right.
waste on all, and then again, 15 million pounds of food that is just in dumpsters now. Potentially, and I would have to look this up, like quarantined because listeria is spread through standing water. So it can contaminate all sorts of things.
And then you look at the working conditions. I mean, if you don't have
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
standards and people are working in these environments, and you've got people like Elon Musk and, you know who, the man that is going to remain nameless tonight, but you know who I'm talking about, but, like, just saying that we don't need these regulations, we don't need overtime, and he's you know, "We're gonna take away overtime." You know, it's, I mean, we're gonna take you know, I mean, it's just like, do you understand? Do we understand that what these people are saying is they don't value workers. They don't value people who are creating these products to make sure we are fed, to make sure I mean, it's like, give me a break. There's absolutely no respect
It,
for the common person.
at all, because again, all you are is a vehicle for rich people to make more money
Right.
from. I think about like Amazon drivers, UPS drivers, like delivery drivers, right? And that every like second is monitored so that they have like the most efficient routes, that they are like delivering. Oh, Gracie.
I love it.
um, that they like again to the second. There is no room to be human. Humans need breaks. Humans need breaks. Again, our nervous systems are not built, even people who don't have ADHD and have super sensitive nervous systems are not built to withstand constant, 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 constant,
Right.
constant, constant,
Exactly.
constant. People are literally delivery drivers are literally dropping dead or developing like again dying from like horrible like bladder infections because they don't even have time to go to the bathroom.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and that is it is so true. We just don't have any I just the whole thing is so it's just sad to me the way people
Yes.
are treated. And, even here with the in Utah with the Great Salt Lake
Oh
and
yeah.
that disaster that has made international news for many, many years now, the powers that be are building an inland port that's gonna be down there. I mean, I'm not quite sure what Mecca's merge by the Great Salt Lake, the
Right.
big transportation hubs that's coming. I mean, it's just like, are you freaking kidding me? And yet, we're not conserving water.
Yeah.
This is toxic stuff that is blowing, and with climate change, we're seeing more and more we don't have the moisture to tamp down some of these things. We're seeing,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just insane, and yet these people do not give a crap.
Right.
And people banning books and people doing all of these things. This is why I try to do, we do at Expanding Frontiers research, why we try to bring in people that are putting together the pieces of this puzzle and talking about it. And this is a concerted effort by a handful of rich people that are using their little underlings that they've been recruiting for 40 years now. Heritage Foundation was, just a network, part of a network,
Yes.
and now we are living the consequences of some of these things. And so I just it's we what we can do. And I somebody asked the question, and I'm sorry I can't. What do we do about it? We've heard about things that are it does seem like doom and gloom, and we are in a really critical point
R-
in my lifetime. And not only that, we're at a critical point for the environment,
yes.
for human rights.
Yes.
What do? We freaking educate ourselves and we go vote,
Yeah.
and we understand that when people have information that they're putting forward and is very clearly linked to Russian disinformation campaigns, you might not want to vote for that person. I know some of you, just love Putin, but, maybe you should just move out of the frickin' country.
Well, and it's even again, it's even more than that because like voting is a thing that we can do. But again, it's building communities
Right.
and getting to know your neighbors, getting to find people who, again, and I don't want to downplay online communities because they're incredibly valuable in many ways, but also developing strong local communities with people who share your values. Because again, talking about voting, talking about elections, the presidential election always gets the news, but it's the local elections where problematic, and I'm being very generous there, politicians are like onboarded basically, and school boards and local elections and things like that. So that's where they get platformed. And then they go on to the national stage. And it's on these local levels that they start making these horrible changes to legislature, book bans, things like that. And so again, you can vote, but it's also developing robust community networks
Exactly.
to
Yep.
prevent those people from even getting on the ballot or on the first place, or getting someone else there, or again creating such a community that it's like that person would never get. There's no chance of that person getting elected. But again, it's returning. Again, we've talked so much about how so many of these policies and so many of these things that happen are anti-life and anti-human. And so it's really about getting back to like, what does it mean to be human? And what, like, again, human connections, real connections, and prioritizing real human needs and not needs that are sold to us to extract resources out of us,
Right.
and that are ultimately meaningless and make us feel empty. And so we're like, oh, but I just need to do more, I just need to buy more, I just need to whatever. Like, no, you don't need any of it. They've sold you a bad bill of goods. You need to reevaluate how you're operating in this life, what you want, like what, again, really think about your values, what matters to you, the world you want to build. Because again, like there are so many structures and so many corporations that have made it so crystal clear. They don't care what happens to you. They don't care what happens to your children. They don't care what happens to your neighbors. They do not care.
Right.
And so what can you do to build closer relationships, to make sure that you can, and again, to leverage like community coalition building so that you can like make the titans of industry and politicians do the right thing.
Right. And I just really, I do want to just say, take a second to thank everybody in chat tonight. It's a great conversation. It really means a lot to me. It means a lot to Jack, and I know to Vanessa, to have this thoughtful dialogue in this community that we've all created. And I think that is powerful. This is an online community, but we can support each other, and we can understand that there is a method to recruitment, propaganda, to disinformation, to I mean, we can understand that. And like you say, Vanessa, we work in our community.
Yes.
We get out, and it's so interesting to me because we're in this agitated state where we're constantly we're in a trauma-induced state
Yes.
from all of this crap. The
Oh yeah.
whole country, the whole freaking world is in this trauma-induced state.
Mhm.
But when you sit back and you have a conversation with somebody like we used to do, a thoughtful, respectful conversation, a lot of times people aren't aware of some of this information. They're not aware that, hey, there might be something bigger going on. Or like with the school book bans, hey, that traces back to a specific group of people that have questionable funding, from nonprofits
Mhm.
and questionable motivations. It's a national syndicate,
Mhm.
out there that is targeting specific books. And guess what? We just did the Tribune just released an article here where they were saying that they did a study, and none of these banned books were even checked out from libraries. And it was, a dozen, 2 dozen parents that
Uh,
created this chaos
That's
that
most of
led
those
to
book
this
bans.
moment in time.
Yeah, that's most of those book bans, by the way.
Right.
And you
And
have to
it's
wonder.
it's a national,
I was just about to say that.
bigger
Yeah,
than that,
exactly.
network
Yeah.
with,
Yes.
and
With
they
talking
recruit
points that they
people.
get from the organization.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
And they target, this is what happens, guys. They target people that they find on social media. Oh, this person's a zealot. We're gonna find somebody that's,
Yeah.
blah, 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 blah. And we like their posting, and like the fact that they're not gonna really look at factual information, and then they are handled
Yes.
groomed, and given the a whip, and they go out there and create all this havoc. I mean,
Yes.
these are organized efforts. All roads lead back to the
Yes.
same people, organizations, whether here or in different countries.
Yes. And this is what I wanted to talk about too, this idea of like, I mentioned this, I think, at the top of the show, this idea of like a low trust society, right? We don't have a consensus reality. And low trust societies, the UN put out a report, low trust societies are susceptible to fascist takeover. This is an existential threat. And so this misinformation, this disinformation, these competing narratives help foment distrust, which ends up also fomenting chaos. And then when people are afraid, oh, somebody says they have the answer. That's the loudest guy. Well,
Right.
maybe some of this stuff I'm not into, but I'm tired of being scared all the time. And then
Yeah.
nobody gets to criticize anything anymore.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
it's I mean, there's a playbook here. It's a pretty simple playbook. It's been in
It's been the
operation for a
same
long
playbook.
time.
Thank you. Yes.
So and like I said, now we're going to have a rough little bit here
Yeah.
for the next couple months, and we just need to remember I mean, this sounds I should write a self-help book, at least a picture book, of a couple of great quotes of mine. But I mean, we really need to take a minute and say, you know what, I can go back 10 years ago, and I remember we had we were much more cohesive. We cared about other people. Other people had rights. People could live if they were consenting adults, they could do what they wanted to do and be protected. If you were a woman, you could know that you had bodily autonomy. We were in a place that was really, I miss those days, and I want them back. And we can do it, because this is getting exposed, because we are mobilizing, because we understand the gravity of the situation and the moment that we are in.
Yes. And I love that you say that, because I don't expose all of this stuff to be like, oh, it's all doom and gloom, and like there are all these forces that are outside of your control. It's to show you have some power here. And because if you can critique, if you can criticize, if you can analyze, and also if you can build community and you can build relationships, you can help to create the world that you want to live in. You don't have to just accept what they're selling you. You can make something better, and you can do something better.
Right, absolutely, and that's the thing. I think that, sometimes we get so depressed and disgusted because the news is and what we're being fed it really is, it is frightening.
Yeah.
It is
Yes.
depressing. It does feel hopeless,
Yes.
and that's what they want to do, is to capitalize on that trauma. And,
Mhm.
I think that I think humans have an incredible instinct to survive. And at the end of the day, 99.9% of the people I know are lovely, caring human beings. That if somebody, regardless of their political beliefs or whatever, if somebody was in a situation and their life depended on another helping hand,
Mhm.
that they would do that. They would reach out and they would help that other person.
Yeah.
And so we have to get back to that place. We can, and we will. And there are so many wonderful people that I've met, including you, Vanessa, and some of the people that I've had on the show, and just this great community. Like I said, this is positive. We can do this.
Yes.
Like, I call me Don Quixote. Some have done that before, and but what can I say? I like a windmill, unlike Trump. But, I mean, I
Yeah.
know we can do it. We can do it. I know we
Yeah.
can. We're going to. And I feel like
Yeah.
there's now that we're educating ourselves and these things are being exposed, it's like this last grasp
Sure.
before, the dying, the last gasp of the dying. I just, you can just read into that what you will.
Right.
But I think that, there people who have agendas are running scared, because they do realize that you can't hide the fact that there's climate change. You can't
It
hide the fact that people are, like you say, with the listeria outbreaks and, all of these things with the hate crimes that we're seeing,
Mhm.
it's just, it's just so freaking, I'm not down. We're not doing this. You're not doing this. We're not doing this.
Right. Right.
And we,
And oh,
yeah, go ahead.
no, you're on a roll. I don't want to take that from you.
Holy roller. I'm starting a new nonprofit tonight.
Perfect. Perfect. Oh,
And then,
you could get a shelf corporation from Wyoming and then you can start.
and gosh, I've got so many great ideas.
I mean, here's the thing. It is totally reasonable to be terrified, to be angry, to be depressed when you see certain things on the news, when you see certain things happening. That is a perfectly reasonable response. Going into
Absolutely.
denial is not. That's actually just going to end up hurting you and all the people around you. Sit in that discomfort, figure out what you can do from that place. And again, try to connect with people.
Absolutely. I mean, it's, yes. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I love these words. This is such a, to me, an important show. You're such an important figure, person in my life. And I know that people that listen to the show really, and follow you on Twitter and follow your work in other areas. I mean, you have a lot of people that really care about you and support your work. And I just want to really quickly before we end, because you know how I like to go overtime sometimes, because I love to talk. So Vanessa saw this last night.
I saw the aurora borealis.
No, speaking of, like, I mean, not well. Anyway, we'll just wonder, to marvel at this.
It was incredible. There's no way for me to convey like the magnitude of it. So I went to Lake Michigan and I just hung out at the beach until I saw it because I was determined. It showed up in May. I missed it. I was determined. So I hung out there for multiple hours. Because of the city lights, you couldn't really see anything. You could catch it through the camera. But to watch the red just streak up the sky and realize it wasn't just over the lake, right? Like that's the photo
Right.
of it over the lake. It's dancing over the lake. The first photo that you showed, it was behind me. So again, these like red pillars of light just dancing all around me. And of course, because I'm frantically trying to take photos of this because I knew I was like, oh, it's going to flare for like 15 minutes
Right.
and then it's going to go. So I'm taking photos of other parts of the sky that aren't lit up because I'm just trying to catch everything. And I realize it because it's coming through on the camera. Basically, half of the sky is lit up with the aurora borealis. You just couldn't see it. But yeah, no, this was the most incredible thing because I could see like the green streaking and then the red just all the way up to the heavens.
Yeah, no, it is. I saw that in Norway once. It is
Yeah,
interesting though, and um, that it's happening more frequently and lower, you
seems a
know,
little.
uh,
Yep.
but it is beautiful. I mean, it is absolutely stunning. You sit there and you watch that and you just think, how in the world? And I
Oh,
think,
yeah.
for you and I, with that sense of wonderment and amazement and just like, just being outside and looking at this beautiful world around you and the wonders of our environment. It's like, why, I don't know. It was a special experience for me,
Yes.
and I know you were totally stoked about it last night.
Oh my God, I
Mm.
couldn't sleep. I was so amped up. No, it again, it's funny you mentioned this and again that we're talking about this in terms of political stuff now because like watching this thing and watching the northern lights just light up the whole sky. Just having this moment, it's like, God, we should all be able to appreciate just the beauty of the world, right? We're constantly distracted. All of our attention is directed towards these other things that ultimately don't serve us, don't serve a sense of wonder, that are just, again, it's profit extraction for other people. And so to just be able to sit and I sat there for hours. I was waiting for
Oh,
hours.
yeah.
I was committed. I was seeing the northern lights.
Good for you. I
Uh,
mean, it's just, it's, and that's the thing, just like getting out and connecting,
yeah.
disconnecting from this fear and hate and, all of this crap, and then just getting out and connecting, because we live, and I'm sorry, you guys, I'm on a roll tonight, but we live on such a beautiful planet. Like,
Yes.
like we have, again, we've got an obligation to make sure that we protect our planet. And I'm so grateful that after years of disinformation campaigns with the oil and gas industry, that we can actually maybe take this seriously and do our part. But
Yeah.
we got a lot of work to do, guys. But we're going to do it
Yes.
together, and we're going to rock it out. That's all I'm going to say.
I love it.
You get my little...
Perfect.
I know. And thank you, Vanessa. What a fun show.
Oh my God. Thank you for having me on again. What a delight.
I know, it's so much fun. And we've got links to your website where you can go check it out. We didn't even talk about your beautiful chainmail.
Oh yeah, thanks. It's
Oh my
okay.
gosh. Okay, really quick, because
Sure.
tell us a little bit about the chainmail. I'm sorry, Vanessa. And thanks, guys. You guys are like, okay, great show.
This could be the
I'm gonna
bonus
keep it
for the
on
people who
2
stick
more.
around. It's okay.
The wrestler with the chainmail. Tell us about who you are designing.
Oh, about Cody Rhodes, son of
Yeah.
Dusty Rhodes, current WWE champion. Yeah. Uh, so anytime you see him with one of those elaborate coats, the coats are made by this incredible legendary gear designer, Sandra Gray. But the scales that you see on the coats, I put together by hand. My personal favorite, okay, so he just was at Bad Blood. These shiny gold scales that just like popped right off the jacket. The one I'm the most proud of currently was SummerSlam, because they wanted like these kind of feathers, and I designed both of those at like 2 different sizes so it could have that like look of like a feather look, basically. So I forged those by hand.
It's so amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool.
God, I love it. You're so talented.
Thanks.
It's yeah, I mean, and I mean, we've got calls for a 3-hour show, so maybe sometime I'll have you back and we'll have a 3, 4, 5-hour show. We know
We could have a marathon. Oh, we could do like a marathon fundraiser.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like a telethon.
And we'd keep on going no matter how
loopy we got, because at some point
yeah,
I
I
would
mean,
get
that's kind of
overtired and I'd be
the
very
fun of it,
loopy.
right? I mean, yeah, I think we should definitely do
Yeah,
that, and then we could have on some people that are actually here in chat tonight that have been
sure.
on the show before, and I think that would be really great. So
That would be
we'll plan
fun.
it. And I just want to say, Vanessa, happy Halloween month.
Thank you. It's the most wonderful time of the year.
We know that. And if you don't think that, I'm sorry. I mean, Christmas is good, whatever.
Whatever.
Halloween, pretty much the best in
That's
my
where
book.
it's at.
So I hope all of you, and if we are going to do a show, I'll be keeping you obviously updated if you go to expandingfrontiersresearch.org to check out who we're going to be bringing on next, and then to also read about the blogs, the things that we're doing with EFR. Make sure you do that. I know that my shows have not been consistent for Friday nights. I'm trying to get back on that schedule, but we will see how it rolls, guys. And thanks for rolling with me. So thanks, Vanessa.
Thank you, Erica.
Happy Halloween, my friend.
Thank you. Happy Halloween.
Yes. Okay, guys, I love you. And thank you for being here. You guys rock, stay safe, and make sure that you take the information that Vanessa gave you tonight and tell people that our loved ones. I know that we've got elderly people that we care about that need this information to stay safe in this environment. So anyway, you guys, thanks so much. I love you guys. And I will catch you I'll catch you soon. All right. Bye, guys.